Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 12 of the 2023 podcast series, where we take a look at the draft-eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. And I know it's been a minute since I've released content, been over a month. Look, there was a trip to California in there, a bout with COVID, and then obviously the holidays just wrapped up. But we're back. I've been watching a ton of college football. When you take a look at the fact that we have 131 FBS programs, I've watched at least one game for all but just 8 of those FBS programs. So you're talking about 123 FBS programs where I've watched at least one game. I've gotten a chance to see a lot of absolutely stellar play from a lot of individuals, a lot of guys that I'm really excited about, not just from the Power 5 conferences, but also Group of 5. I mean, if you watch some action in the middle of the week on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, that's really where they can showcase their game. But really, as we get into December, we know what this time of year is all about. We're getting into bowl season. Bowl season is one of my favorite times of year. You get to see a lot of different fun matchups. Some of the different players getting showcased. Obviously, there are guys that'll sit out due to the NFL draft, but and really now the transfer portal as well. We're seeing a lot of guys already deciding that they're going to go ahead and put their name into the hat in the transfer portal. Really going to be a different type of year this season, and really kind of a what to expect in the coming years as well. But right now, really, I think the focus should be on the college football playoff, and we've got 4 teams at the top right now, and we're going into the conference championships. 4 teams win, they're going to be in. We've got Ohio State, we've got Alabama on the outside looking in right now. They're hoping for some chaos this weekend. Right now, obviously, we know we have Georgia at number 1, Michigan at number 2, TCU at number 3, and USC moves into that number 4 spot after a big win over Notre Dame. Ohio State going down to Michigan. Caleb Williams, look, we know that this kid is not even draft eligible yet. We're talking about next season. We're looking ahead to Drake May and J.J. McCarthy and Quinn Ewers doing battle with Caleb Williams to find out who that number 1 overall pick is going to be. And I'll tell you what, when you watch Caleb Williams play, though, there's a lot of Patrick Mahomes to him when you watch him play. It's exciting. He does things that not very many people can do, period. I don't care if you're in college, in the pros, the way that he's able to elude the rush, still keep his eyes down the field, and then the way that he's able to throw the ball effortlessly, whether it's rolling left, rolling right, it doesn't matter. Those are the same attributes in the same way that I described Patrick Mahomes just a few years ago when he came out of Texas Tech, and I see Caleb Williams in that same light, and I'm really excited to see what he can do to close out the 2022 season, then obviously going into 2023 as well. Now with USC, I think when people talk about them, they're the most likely team to lose. Why? Because they're the one team that's lost to their opponent this weekend. So they're taking on Utah Friday, December 2nd, and as we're recording this is the morning of the 2nd, so we're actually getting into, the game day for the Trojans, Allegiant Stadium there in Las Vegas. And when we talk about the matchup, first we stay with USC. We're talking about just the draft-eligible prospects. Obviously, Jordan Addison is finally healthy. This is a guy, there's a lot of debate. Who is Jordan Addison? Is he a guy that can play on the outside? Is he solely stuck to the slot because of his smaller stature? Though he's not the biggest guy by any means, only 165, 170 pounds, very slight, but at the same time, he's got those long arms, kind of reminds you of Devontae Smith in that mold. I see Jordan Addison as being a mid-first round pick. He can come off the board anywhere in that 10 to 12 range, all the way back to about 20 to 25, but the explosiveness is absolutely there. This is a guy that I think Trojan fans have been waiting for him to be turned loose now that he's 100%. You saw in that Stanford game his ability to get vertical, corner catches up to him, he's able to maintain his balance and stay up on this spin move to break the tackle and continue into the end zone. His ability to make cuts without slowing down at all down the field. It's not just a side-to-side cut. He's making cuts down the field and very explosive. The route running ability is off the charts. Look for Jordan Addison to have a big game there. But look, he's got Clark Phillips III, the best corner in the Pac-12 conference, a guy who has a great shot at that Jim Thorpe Award as well. And when you look at Clark Phillips, what this guy is able to do, he's leading the FBS in interceptions. And what I love about Clark Phillips is just the anticipation, right? His ability to read the quarterback, understand the routes, understand what's going on in front of him, and then no wasted movement, driving on the football. And then once he arrives, he knows how to affect the catch point. He knows how to go up, make a play on the football. And look, he's not just a guy who's going up there looking to bat the ball down. He's looking to make a play on the ball. He's looking to intercept that pass. And look, he's a guy that could take it to the house. Caleb Williams has to be careful. And when I look at Caleb Williams, I think the biggest thing that he needs to work on is being able to see the entire field. I think sometimes he's predetermined as to where he's going to go with the football. He'll really lock in on that primary receiver when he's in the pocket. When he moves out and he's rolling out, that's where he's at his most dangerous, and he's allowed to improvise, keep the eyes down the field, looking for a guy that's going to be open. But he needs to do a better job of just taking what the defense gives him. He wants to make the big play. He wants to extend the football down the field. And a lot of times he's got those open receivers underneath. If he tries to gamble, Clark Phillips is a guy that can make him pay. That's the matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing, because we could seriously see that matchup in the NFL next season. And I'm really looking forward to that. Sticking with the Trojans, obviously we know Travis Dye, one of my favorite running backs in the country. We know that he's down to an injury, out for the year. This was really the emotional leader for that offense. But I'll tell you what, Austin Jones, the transfer from Stanford, he's really picked up where the Oregon transfer left off. And with Austin Jones, look, the consummate professional, I think this is something that really speaks to, this is a guy, he never gave up. He stuck with it, and when he got his time to shine, he really stepped up and has elevated his game. Over 140 yards there against Notre Dame. A guy that, he hits the hole, continues with that leg drive, continues falling forward. I think that Austin Jones is going to have another big game for the Trojans, because, look, they can have that high-powered attack. They can throw the football down the field all they want, but if they're scoring in bunches and only taking a minute or so off the clock, that defense that has struggled, you put them out there against a physical Utah offense that's going to want to beat you up, that could really play right into what Kyle Whittingham is going to want to do with Utah. So I think Austin Jones has to come up big again. Obviously, you've got the talented freshman, Raleek Brown, the explosiveness there in the backfield as well. Darwin Barlow, the bigger back coming there, the transfer from TCU. But I think Austin Jones is the guy that you have to really keep an eye on. And when you talk about him at the next level, this is a guy, he could get drafted late. Look, he's 5'10", 201, a guy who over 1,700 yards in his career on the ground, also has 84 receptions to his name, over 600 yards on the ground for the Trojans, 17 receptions as well this season, and a guy that you can see the poise, you can see he's really a team-first guy, and when he was given the opportunity, he was able to excel. So this is a guy that has no problem in a running back by committee or understanding what his role is. He needs to work on that pass protection. That's really why there were stretches where we didn't see Austin Jones. We saw a lot of Travis Dye. Raleek Brown started to kind of get pushed in there as well. But with Raleek Brown, he also just that immaturity, a guy that's still a freshman. He wanted to dance a little bit. Austin Jones is a lot more decisive. Maybe a late round pick, especially if he's able to really showcase what he could do in the Pac-12 championship, and potentially if USC were to win in the actual playoff itself, that's where he can make a name for himself and really get into that 6th, 7th round conversation. I think right now he's probably on the outside looking in with a lot of talented running backs in this year's draft class, but there's a chance that we could see Austin Jones still drafted late. So then when you talk about the Trojans, you're looking at that offensive line. And I'll tell you what, Josh Henson to me is USC's most valuable coach. I know that Pro Football Focus a season ago was really high on USC's offensive line, but I'll tell you what, that line struggled to really generate any push in the running game. And I thought there were stretches where they were very porous, with the passing attack as well. And really, you look at this line, and Brett Nealon at that center spot, holding down that point of attack. Nealon is one of the guys that I think has really developed nicely this season. 6'2", 295 pounds. Look, against Notre Dame, he would anchor and absorb the blow of the linebacker Maris Lufau coming downhill and would really hold that point of attack. You also love the fact that he's going up against a defensive tackle. He'll get driven back a little bit off of the bull rush, but then he's able to reset his feet, anchor, and play with leverage. I think he does a good job climbing, against UCLA, climbed to the goal line, gets a block on John Vaughns, along with Austin Jones, paving the way for Caleb Williams on a 6-yard touchdown on a design quarterback draw. Inside zone, took the defensive tackle, drives him to the outside, allowing Austin Jones to plant and cut inside off of that for another 6-yard touchdown. A lot of what USC likes to do, they have that movement with the offensive line. Brett Nealon is showing his ability to get out and move, locate his man under control, and really drive through his man, keep the feet moving, and then in pass protection, being able to anchor, absorb some of those bull rushes, and be able to set those feet, drop the weight, and be able to hold that point. I think Brett Nealon is one of the better centers in this year's draft class. He'll be a day 3 guy, probably in that 6th to 7th round range, but I think Brett Nealon has really pulled himself into being a draftable center that we can really be talking about. Justin Dedich, right next to him, a guy that's played right guard and left guard, 6'2", 305. This is a guy that was pulling tractor trailers in the offseason. Incredibly strong. You see that at the point of attack, being able to anchor against Stanford. That was one of the notes that I had, just constantly being able to hold that down. He and Brett Nealon getting a lot of push, a lot of leg drive, opening up some holes. Very vocal leader. This was a guy that, pregame, a lot of the fiery, nature. You're seeing 57 do that for the Trojans. He's another guy that I think could potentially sneak into the draft. More than likely is going to be a priority free agent, but I think after last season, I didn't even really have him on my radar as a guy that I would even be talking about at this point. I thought that he's really elevated his game this year, and a guy that I'm really excited about to see what he could do. Can he at least make a practice squad next season? And then there's Andrew Voorhees, Mr. Consistency, number 72, 6'6", 320 pounds, a guy that's played tackle and guard for the Trojans, a guy that's battled some injuries. Against Arizona, there was an injury, he wasn't able to play. Even against Notre Dame, we saw him have to leave the game at a time. That was ultimately why they ended up having to kick Justin Dedich over there to left guard. But a guy, look, he's very athletic, climbs to the second level. Against Colorado, he pulled around to the right, located the edge rusher Guy Thomas, drove him 6 yards down the field. Once he gets his hands under that pad level, uses that leverage to his advantage, and that defensive tackle is not going anywhere. Very athletic as well. I thought some of his tape last year has been better at times. But look, Voorhees, he's going to be a guy probably in that 4th round consideration. Might be able to slide into 3rd round, but I'm thinking 4th round probably feels about comfortable for Andrew Voorhees at this point. But again, a guy that I'm definitely excited about there on the interior of that USC offensive line. Defensively, the guy that I will pound the table for time and time again is Tuli Tuipulotu. Now, this is a guy, look, when you talk about Tuli, he's 6'4", 290 pounds. I've compared him to Cameron Jordan, who when he was at Cal back 2007 to 2010, he weighed in at right around 6'4", 287. And the numbers really speak for themselves. You see what Tuli's been able to do so far this season. 20 tackles for loss, 12.5 sacks. He has 20 in his career, which is actually more than what Cam was able to do in his 4 seasons there at Berkeley. But the body type, the frame, I'm really curious to see just how long Tuli's arms are, because that's really what is Cam Jordan's calling card, or those 35-inch arms. Also ran a 4.78 40 at 6'4" and 287 pounds. what type of 40 are we going to see out of Tuli. I think he's got a nice burst. Might be more in that 4.85, 4.9 range, but I'll be curious to see what that looks like when he gets to the combine. But look, Tuli's he's only a junior. Could he come back? Sure, but to me, I think this is a fringe first round, early second round pick because he has that versatility to play with his hand in the dirt. In a 4-3 scheme, he can kick inside and be a tackle as well. He could be a 5 technique in an odd man front. He can play that 4-eye lineup on the inside of the tackle as well. And Tuli, look, for SC, he's really lined up everywhere. He's been a stand-up rush end, rushing the passer. He's also kind of played that linebacker spot, roaming around over the middle. I saw him against Notre Dame. Michael Mayer lined up in the slot. Tuli gets out there on him and is jamming him at the top of his route, making sure that Michael Mayer really isn't going anywhere. Once he ran into Big 49, he didn't move after that. So, Tuli, I think what makes him so special is the handwork, the hand usage. That's one of the things that you really say about a lot of the USC defensive linemen. I think Sean Nua, the defensive line coach, has really helped Tuli develop his game and really shine as a pass rusher because you see the speed, you see him bend. He's not the twitchiest guy by any means, but he can bend a little bit coming off the edge. Once he flattens out, he's relentless getting after the quarterback, but it's the hands. He's got the violent hands. You're going to see him chop down. You're going to see him rip through. You're going to see an arm over. He's going to attack you on the outside. He's going to come back to the inside. They've got Tuli doing a little bit of everything there for the Trojans. He's the guy that really up front, if he gets to the quarterback and he's pressuring Cam Rising early and often, there's a reason why USC has so many turnovers. It's because they put pressure on the quarterback. Yes, they give up a lot of yards. The back end has struggled, and when USC is not putting pressure on the quarterback, they're able to make plays, especially when they're spreading USC out. But at the same time, once they do put pressure on you, they are really good at affecting that quarterback, making him make bad throws. And when he does that, you're looking at a guy by the name of Mekhi Blackman there on the back end of that defense. And really with Mekhi Blackman, he'll probably be seeing a lot of Devon Vele, their outstanding junior wideout. I think he's 6'4", 6'5", a speedster there on the outside. And look, with Mekhi Blackman, it's his first year with the Trojans, was at Colorado in Boulder. This season, having his best year, 3 interceptions, 10 pass breakups to go along with 52 tackles. And what I really like about Mekhi Blackman is his competitiveness. This is a guy that's going to go all out on the outside. He's going to compete for footballs. One of the things that you love is the really the ball skills. He's going to attack the football in the air. You've seen quite a few where he's going to be making a play on that ball and attacking the football. Out-breaking routes, he's looking to try to drive that guy out of bounds whenever possible if they leave his feet. I think he does a really good job staying in stride with his man. He'll locate the football and try to make a play on the ball as well. 6 foot, 175 pounds. Some people say that he's the best corner in the Pac-12. Look, Christian Gonzalez is going to be a first-round pick, may even be a top 10 pick when it's all said and done. Mekhi Blackman isn't on that level, but I think Mekhi Blackman has a chance to be a late day 2, early day 3 pick when it's all said and done. I think Mekhi Blackman's going to have a big day on the back end of that defense. Sophomore Kalen Bullock, 4 interceptions there at that safety spot. He's a guy playing that center field. If Cam Rising gets under pressure by that front, look for Kalen Bullock over the top, showing that tremendous range. He'll be a safety that we'll be talking about for next year's draft, come the 2023 season. And, obviously then there's Shane Lee. And look, Shane Lee, he's 6 foot, 240 pounds. He's physical, he's muscular. The transfer from Alabama. Look, this was a guy, he stepped in for Dylan Moses when he went down to injury as a freshman. 86 tackles, 6.5 going for loss, 4.5 sacks. Ends up getting injured himself, comes back, couldn't really find his way into the rotation, comes to USC, and look, 70 tackles, 6.5 going for loss, 2.5 sacks. A guy who plays very well coming downhill. I think that's really the biggest thing that you see out of Shane Lee. He can come downhill, no problem. You ask him to drop back into zone coverage, no problem. He was able to pick off a pass, got into a throwing lane and got depth. It was almost Tampa 2 style. You just saw him take off and dropping and making an interception. But if you ask him to cover tight ends or running backs out of the backfield, he is absolutely lost. To me, he's really a 2-down linebacker. If you want to send him on some blitzes, you can, but that really limits his draft stock. I think you could get a very good special teams player out of him. A guy, again, he's got some good tools to work with, some instincts. Playing the run, makes a lot of plays in the backfield, gets downhill in a hurry, but he's going to have to work on that coverage ability before we can really anoint Shane Lee at all as a guy that we would be considering in the first 4 rounds of the draft. Obviously, USC has the freak Eric Gentry, 6'6", and a little over 200 pounds with a 7-foot wingspan. He's going to have his hands full because you have to figure he's going to be the one that's going to be asked to cover Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid, to me, is the clear-cut number 2 tight end in this year's draft. My apologies to Darnell Washington, but this is the guy that we're going to be seeing coming off the board after Michael Mayer. 6'4", 242 pounds, having a banner season, 66 catches, 850 yards, 8 touchdowns. But it was that first game against USC, they could not cover this guy. Now, you'll remember that was also when Eric Gentry went down to his ankle injury and wasn't out there when Utah ultimately came back and beat them 43-42. But just reminder, 16 catches, 234 yards, and a touchdown. Whenever Cam Rising got in trouble, he was going to Dalton Kincaid. First down, Dalton Kincaid. Third down, Dalton Kincaid. He was literally everywhere. I think USC was seeing number 86 in their nightmares. He's going to be a very welcome addition at the next level, a safety valve, a security blanket. Obviously, I can't compare him to Travis Kelce, who's one of the best tight ends in the game, but you think about what he is for Patrick Mahomes, that's exactly what Kincaid is for Cam Rising, and I could see him playing a similar role at the next level. Early second-round pick, in my opinion. You're going to see him early and often, and the Trojans, if they want to beat Utah, they're going to have to find a way to slow him down. I know they're not going to be able to stop him, but can they slow him down? Now, obviously, we know that Tavion Thomas, his career is over at Utah. He's announced that he's going to go ahead and enter the draft, had a toe injury that he sustained, so he's going to prepare for the draft. You're talking about a big physical running back. That's definitely going to hurt Utah on the ground. Obviously, they've got Micah Bernard, a running back who, he's doubled as a linebacker for them. We saw that in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State. He's played under the brightest of lights, but look, with Tavion Thomas, 6'2", 221 pounds, a year removed from 1,100 yards and 21 touchdowns. This year, through 10 games, just 687 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns. Really not much of a factor in the passing game. Tavion Thomas is going to have to show that he can be a pass catcher out of the backfield. I look at Tavion Thomas. I see him as an early to mid day 3 guy. I think probably in that 5th round range. He's a big physical dude, but what is he going to be for these teams at the next level? When you talk about Utah running backs, obviously the first name that has to come to mind is Zach Moss, right? And so when you think of Zach Moss, he was a 3rd round pick. He was 5'9", 205, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and had 66 receptions in his career. So when you look at it, he had some of that versatility. He had that physicality, 38 touchdowns in his career as well, over 4,000 yards on the ground. Tavion Thomas, you wonder if that 2021 season was that more of a fluke, and really what you're getting is a guy who's more of an average running back between the tackles, physical presence, big back. Really what I'd love to see him do is kind of slim down a little bit. I remember when Kareem Hunt was at Toledo, he came into the combine and really the All-Star games, he had slimmed down and looked much more explosive. That's what I'd like to see from Tavion Thomas, is really kind of elevate his game to the next level doing it that way. For Utah, Obviously, you're also talking about Jayden Daniels, the left tackle. And Jayden Daniels, to me, is a guy that I think is ultimately going to be a guard at the next level. The foot speed on the outside, I think he struggles at times. When they played USC, beaten off the ball early by Tuli Pelotu, got into the backfield very quick. The other thing, too, that I see with Daniels is, USC, the nose tackle, Stanley Taufoao, striking him to the chest, getting him off balance. You watched him against Oregon, though. Able to keep his feet under him, keep Brandon Dorlus in front of him, use his hands, that hand fighting, but that's where he gets himself into trouble. He's so confident with his hands that if he's got that power, as I said with Stanley there at SC, Dorlus was able to use his hands to get him off balance, and that's where he struggles. That pad level will creep up. He'll start leaning and lunging. So he's got to work on that technique a little bit. You watched him against UCLA when he had that wide base. He's able to anchor against the bull rush. I think the speed of the game at times I think that's where he's going to struggle. I think ultimately he is going to kick inside to guard, but he's going to have to make sure that he keeps that pad level low. Otherwise, he's going to get pushed around quite a bit. I think what Utah is going to want to do is they're going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to keep Caleb Williams and company off the field, and so they're going to be wanting to rely on that offensive line. Jayden Daniels is going to have to come up huge. But then you're talking about Cam Rising. Look, only a junior, the Texas transfer, 6'2", 218 pounds. This is a guy, who he is what he is. He's a tough guy. He's a grinder. He's a guy that can make plays with his legs, extend plays, keep his eyes down the field. Gritty. He's a gutty guy, but he's not the best athlete in the world by any means. That arm strength is not great. It's good, but not great. This year, look, 66% completion percentage, over 2,600 yards, 22 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Decision-making at times, he will try to force it down the football field. Look, he's going to have back-to-back seasons with over 400 yards on the ground. So even though he's not the best athlete in the world, he's still productive and can get the job done. It's really going to be an interesting game. Can USC avenge its only loss? We know Caleb Williams and that explosive offense is going to want to move the football down, play with pace. Utah is going to want to slow things down, and really take advantage of picking that USC defense apart. Tui Pelotu up front, Shane Lee with the backers, Mekhi Blackman on the back end. This is a game for them to really showcase their skills when we're talking about the draft. And then offensive line for USC, there are going to be moments where they're going to want to hold on to that football for a sustained 5-6 minute drive. Brett Nealon, Andrew Voorhees, Justin Dedich, and then the running back, Austin Jones. These are guys that can end up hearing their names called during the draft come April of next year with games like this. I think it's going to be an interesting contest. It's going to be very exciting to watch. I think it's going to come down to the wire yet again. Moving on from USC, we look at the number 3 team, and that's TCU. All 3 of the remaining teams are still undefeated. TCU going up against Kansas State. And look, there was a 38-28 game the first time these two teams met. Going at it this time in Jerry's World in Arlington, Texas. And I'll tell you what, TCU has a quarterback, one of my favorites in the draft, and that's Max Duggan. The reason why Max Duggan is such a favorite of mine is this is a guy who wasn't even a starter at the beginning of the season. Max Duggan, he was benched and ultimately, due to an injury, gets thrust into the starting role and has never relinquished it. And the Horned Frogs, are in the driver's seat. They control their own destiny thanks in large part to the play of Max Duggan, a guy who could very well be called to New York as a Heisman finalist. 6'2", 201, 66% completion percentage, over 3,000 yards through the air, 29 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. He's a gutty, gaming performer on the ground. Over 1,700 yards in his career, 24 touchdowns, has just under 300 this year with 5 scores to his credit. And Max Duggan, he doesn't have a huge arm, but this is a guy, look, when he's under pressure, he's going to extend plays with his legs, keeps those eyes down the field, and he knows that he's got some big receivers. Savion Williams is 6'5", Quentin Johnston, the beast, a guy who I think could inch his way into that top 10, he knows that he can put the ball up to those guys and they can make a play. You're going to see some anticipation out of him. You're going to see him put the ball placement right up where they can climb the ladder, make a play, back shoulder throws as well. I love the fact that he's able to go through his progressions, find the open receiver, sees the entire field, will take what the defense gives him. But look, he's going to have to deal with a defense that's led by Felix Anudike-Uzomah, the pass rusher extraordinaire for the Wildcats. And with Felix, look, when you're looking at 91, he's an explosive guy coming off the edge, 6'3", 252 pounds. The junior, 7.5 sacks this season after a stellar year where he put up 11 the year prior. Had 6 forced fumbles as a sophomore, added another 2 this season. And what you see with him is just really that explosive burst coming off the football. That's one of the things that's, I think, one of his calling cards. He's going to beat the left tackle coming outside. But when he played against Kansas, you saw his ability to play the run as well, not just getting after the quarterback. Beats the tackle to the inside. They're trying to kind of slant towards the right. Actually gets out in front of that left tackle and nearly collared the running back. Ultimately wasn't able to drop him, but the linebacker was able to make a play on the football. You saw him setting the edge against the run. Gets up the field to the outside, forcing the running back Devin Neal to cut it back to the inside. Uses his hands to get off the left tackle's block. Drops the running back for no gain. Against Oklahoma State, read the jet sweep. John Paul Richardson coming around, was able to beat the left tackle there, use his hands to get off that block, gets up the field, runs by the running back that's trying to block him there in space, and able to drop that wide receiver in the backfield for a loss. You see him, he likes to lower that shoulder into the tackles and guards at times to kind of drive them back with some of his bull rush, but then the explosiveness as well against Missouri, dipping that inside shoulder, so quick turning the corner, flattens out and arrives at the quarterback in a hurry. So I think that's one of the things that I look at for Max Duggan. He's got to know where 91 is on the field at all times. I mentioned Austin Moore, and look, Austin Moore is only he's a redshirt junior. He'll come back next year, the high school wrestler. This is a guy that seems to be all over the field making plays. An instinctive guy, understands leverage. He's a very sure tackler in the open field, 6 foot 214, a little undersized at that linebacker spot. But look, 82 tackles, 9 going for loss, 1.5 sacks, has 3 pass breakups, an interception to his name. You're going to see him flying around sideline to sideline. That'll be number 41 in the purple and silver. Because I guess, when you're talking about TCU, the silver and black. So it's going to be an all-purple affair in this game. But then when you talk about TCU, obviously you're going to be talking about Quentin Johnson. This is a guy who's battled some injuries, so he hasn't always been 100%. And we were waiting for Quentin Johnson, though, to break out. And boy, has this guy broken out in a big way. Really showcased, everyone was waiting. Is this guy going to develop into the receiver everyone is expecting him to be? 6'4", 6'5", 193 pounds. Uses that size to his advantage. I talked about Drake London, how teams needed to really key in on him, game plan around him. They knew that he was going to get the football, and they still couldn't stop him. Well, look at this. Against Kansas, 14 catches, 206 yards and a score. Follows that up against Oklahoma State, 8 catches for 180 yards and a touchdown as well. 4 straight games with a touchdown before going down to injury. Missed the Texas Tech game. Shows back up against the Longhorns. 3 catches for 66 yards. That's 22 yards per reception on that day. And a score. What you love about Quentin Johnson, he knows how to use that size to his advantage. In that K-State game, went up against the safety. Outside release, shows that after eating up the cushion, then crosses the face of the safety, Josh Hayes, runs the post, gets vertical. Max Duggan puts the ball just out of his reach on a diving attempt. So he wasn't able to haul in the pass, but you just see the route running ability. You see his ability to get vertical down the field, despite the fact that he's 6'4", moves very well. Duggan making sure with that touch to be able to drop it into the receiver. That's something that you're going to have to kind of keep an eye on a little bit. Does a really good job forcing his way through press coverage, stutter, runs through the jam, gets inside the corner on a slant, turns up the field. This is a guy, look, I really the matchup that I'm looking forward to is against Julius Brents. Julius Brents there for K-State is a very big corner. He's 6'3", 6'4", 202 pounds. I think they said that he has like a 6'10 wingspan. This is a guy who's going to want to get up on you. He's going to want to, he's instinctive, uses that length. And even when he doesn't turn around, he's reading the receiver, puts those long limbs up to affect the catch point, breaks, drives on the ball, not a whole lot of wasted movement as he's coming downhill. Can get a little handsy at times, will get beaten. So he's got to watch that a little bit. But what you loved was there was a sluggo against Kansas. The receiver, frankly, didn't really sell the slant on it, but was able to jump inside. You saw the change of direction to get back up the field on that double move, right on the receiver hip pocket, stride for stride with the receiver in the slot on another play. After a jam on the line, stays right on the receiver hip, and the receiver gets that initial separation, but since he was right there, right on the hip, had that arm bar there, didn't affect the receiver, did not impede his progress at all, and then attacked the ball at the catch point. Didn't even need to turn around. But it's one of those things at the next level. You're going to want to make sure you get that head on a swivel, get your head around, locate the football. Want to see more of that out of Julius Brents, but I think that's going to be a matchup that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. That's for sure. Now, TCU can also run the ball, and when you're talking about that, you have to be talking about Kendre Miller. Now, Kendre Miller, he's a big physical back there for TCU, and really a lot of fun to watch. Big number 33, 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's a junior, so he is draft eligible. This is a guy, the contact balance is ridiculous. He's very slippery once he gets to the line of scrimmage, though. He'll run through arm tackles, gets to the second level. You're going to see him throw that stiff arm and then that speed down the field. Quick cuts up the field in a hurry, doesn't lose a whole lot of speed there as well, but he's also patient, especially on those outside zones, waits for those blockers to develop, then hits the hole downhill. I mentioned the blockers. Their top offensive line prospect is Steve Avila, 6'4", 330 pounds. This is a dude who is very stout at the point of attack. He's physical when he keeps that pad level down. Played center for him last year. They brought in Alon Ali, from SMU. Look, he played left tackle, right tackle, left guard, and center for the Mustangs. And when he started there, ultimately allowed Steve Avila to move over to left guard. And you'll see the combo block on the defensive tackle, and then the linebacker springing Kendre Miller. I think you're going to see some of that movement to Steve Avila. Good athleticism, pulling around. But he wants to his game is about being physical. He wants to maul you. And once he gets his hands under the pad level, you're going to see him try to wash you down the line. He's going to drive you off the football. And he's also going to look to try to drive you into the ground. He can anchor very well. Against Baylor, the edge rusher, Bryson Jackson, tried to rush the passer up the middle. Avila was able to stand him up, neutralize that pass rush. So I think Avila is going to have a big game there going up against some of these big defensive tackles there for K-State. When I look at when K-State has the football, obviously you have to be talking about Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn is the heart and soul of this team. Reminds everyone of Darren Sproles. He's only 5'6", 173 pounds, but the dude plays so much bigger than that size. The contact balance is ridiculous. This is a guy who knows how to hide behind those blockers before really springing into action. So yes, he is diminutive, but he's patient. He'll wait for his blockers, tries to hide behind those, and then explodes through the hole. Excellent power in his lower half. The core strength is ridiculous in this kid. The suddenness, coupled with that, the ability to continue to drive down the football field, extend plays because of that leg drive. But then it's such quick feet, the jump cuts, sidestepping defenders in the backfield. And then once he gets out into the open field, look, against Kansas, had that 80-yard run, which was absolutely ridiculous. Catches a screen pass at the 7, makes the catch, quick acceleration to the second level, 2 defenders over pursue, able to cut it back to his left. They fly by to his right. Then he accelerates all the way down the field, picks up those 80 yards. This is a dude who is explosive, and despite that small size, you look at Tariq Cohen, he was able to carve out a niche there with the Bears. I think Deuce Vaughn is one of those guys. Darren Sproles as well. I think Deuce Vaughn finds a home at the next level. He's got to go to the right team, a right team that's going to be able to utilize him. But Deuce Vaughn is absolutely spectacular. He's explosive. He's going to be the key. If TCU can slow down Deuce Vaughn, force Will Howard, the quarterback, to beat you. He's not the guy that started the year for the Wildcats. It was Adrian Martinez, who was having his best year by far at the collegiate level after playing there at Nebraska. Will Howard, 6'5", 235, a guy who's going to stand more in the pocket. So Deuce Vaughn is going to have a huge day to get things going, to be able to open up the passing game for the likes of Malik Knowles and Cade Warner, Kurt Warner's son. So I think that's going to be key. When you look at TCU, they've got obviously the 18-year-old there at nose tackle, Demonic Williams. Kid is absolutely a beast. So quick off the ball despite the size. He's a playmaker there. But when you get to that linebacker spot, the heart and soul of that defense is going to be D. Winters. Number 13, 6'1", 230 pounds. You see him flying to the football. The instincts, he reads, he reacts, he gets there in a hurry. He's able to play that sideline-to-sideline ability, and he's going to be a guy that's going to have a huge day. Wouldn't be surprised if we see double-digit tackles from him. 6'1", 223 pounds, 57 tackles on the year, 10.5 going for loss, 6.5 sacks. A guy that loves to play behind the line of scrimmage. You see that range, playing sideline to sideline, as I mentioned. The coverage ability, I think that's really where we want to see some improvement out of D. Winters. You don't want to just be a two-down linebacker, but I think he does a really good job getting to the quarterback, affecting that, the throwing lane, getting his hands up to knock the pass down, pressuring the quarterback while blitzing. D. Winters, to me, is a guy that's going to have a huge day for the Horned Frogs. And then obviously there's LaDainian Tomlinson's nephew, Travius Hodges Tomlinson, 5'9", 177 pounds. He's not the biggest guy by any means, but this dude is going to compete. He went up against 6'5", wideout Jerram Bradley when they played Texas Tech. Physical at the line of scrimmage, goes up and attacks the receiver's hands. That's one of the things that you love. A lot of contact with his game. He's going to grab you a lot, solely in contact mode at times. Doesn't always get his head around and locate the football. By the time he does, sometimes it's too late, so he'll draw some of those penalties. But what you love about him is he wants to compete. He's going to come up. He's going to challenge you in run support. There was a game where he was able to come downhill to set up a 3rd and 3, drop Deuce Vaughn in the open field for no gain. Like I said, physical, aggressive, has no problem playing press coverage, can get, turn and run with the receiver. A lot of times they'll get inside release. They'll run a dig route. He's able to show little wasted movement on that ball, on that cut, gets underneath the route to affect the catch. So to me, when I look at Travius, I think he's another guy, has to have a big day. He'll be covering the likes of Malik Knowles. Really K-State is going to be a team that wants to grind it out on the ground. Deuce Vaughn having a big day, so that passing attack is more complementary. So if you can really just take that away and force them to be one-dimensional, that's really where I think you're going to have them. And look, 31 pass breakups, 5 interceptions in his career, including 3 interceptions this season. This is a guy that's going to want to make plays, and I'm going to be excited to see that. Look, TCU, they've got some safeties as well. They got 3 of them that really there's 4 to 5 that kind of rotate, but 3 that'll start. Mark Perry, the transfer from Colorado, is probably the best of the bunch. Watch that secondary, see if they can really. They'll probably get sucked up wanting to take away Deuce Vaughn as a runner. Will Howard, again, a guy that's going to have a huge day throwing the football, ultimately, if K-State wants to get the win, because I think the focus is going to be on Deuce Vaughn. You can't stop this kid. You can only hope to contain him. And look, it was a 38-28 game, and Deuce Vaughn ultimately held under 100 yards, just 83 yards on the ground. Will Howard had 225 yards passing and a couple of touchdowns, had an interception. Malik Knowles, number one receiver for him. And really, when you look at the passing attack, they only completed 14 passes the entire game because a lot of their damage was going to be on the ground. Granted, Adrian Martinez, he goes down to injury as well. I think we're going to be seeing a different K-State team because now you've got the right guy that's leading it now on the back end, actually having some time under his belt. When you look at what TCU did in the game, Max Duggan, very efficient, 17 of 26, 280 yards, 3 scores, no picks. But it was about Kendre Miller. 29 carries, 153 yards, 2 touchdowns. So that's really going to be the big thing. I mentioned Austin Moore has continued to get better. Daniel Green and Khalid Duke, you're going to have big games, guys. And then you look at the secondary, they got three safeties. You can expect them to come down, want to play in the box, stop the running game, which is when Max Duggan is going to beat you over the top, throwing to Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, Tay Barber, Savion Williams, and then they've got the tight ends as well. Jared Wiley's going to get into the attack a little bit as well. I think at the end of the day, TCU is probably going to have a little bit too much firepower for K-State. But look, if K-State can grind it out, really put pressure on Max Duggan, if they can slow down the running game a little bit and really play ball control and hold on to that football quite a bit, then I think they can make it interesting. I think at the end of the day, though, it's going to be all about TCU. I think the Frogs get it done, punch their ticket to the CFP. Then we move to Michigan against Purdue. Really quick, talking about Purdue, I don't see a situation where Purdue has much of a chance in this game at all. The Big Ten West. I was really looking forward to seeing what Illinois could do against Michigan. See Chase Brown, nation's leading rusher, against that Michigan defense. Ultimately, that wasn't to be. We're going to get Purdue instead. When you look at Purdue, obviously, Aiden O'Connell has announced he will start the Big Ten Championship, playing with the heavy heart. His brother Sean passed away. And obviously condolences to Aiden and his family. And when you look at Aiden O'Connell, this is a guy, he developed that chemistry with Charlie Jones, the receiver. But look, they played together in high school. 6'3", 200 pounds. He's a career 66% completion percentage guy. Over 3,000 yards for the second consecutive season. 22 touchdowns. Does have 11 picks. Will get himself into trouble at times. A guy that, look, he's got 5 400-yard games under his belt. He gambles at times. He doesn't always see the field. He's going to try to drop the ball in on a corner route against Minnesota, use the touch to drop it in, but doesn't account for the safety, Jordan Howden, playing over the top, able to get over and pick off the pass. Needed to actually put the ball on a line instead of using that touch to try to drop it over. Then that safety doesn't really make the play on the ball. But he's one of those quarterbacks to where I think he could be a late day 3 guy because he is such an intelligent quarterback. He's a guy that knows where to go with the football, throws some nice deep balls. If you watch that game against Syracuse, with Charlie Jones, you saw him being able to spread the football around. You like the fact that he goes through his progressions, takes what the defense is going to give him. Decent arm, not great, but a lot of those deep balls, putting the ball on the money. Ball placement, though, was inconsistent. Sometimes on those deep balls, they'd be a little underthrown. Sometimes he put the ball too far to the inside so that the receiver can't really make a play on the football. He's going to have to make sure that he is on point early and often for Purdue to make an impact. Now, when you look at the receivers, Charlie Jones, the Iowa transfer, 6'4", 188 pounds. As I mentioned, went to high school with Aiden O'Connell. These are guys that grew up together, so the chemistry is obviously going to be there. This is a guy, he's lightning quick, very sudden coming off the line, excellent route runner. He's one of those guys that's very difficult to cover. In that Syracuse game, he's beating Garrett Williams. He's beating him deep on verticals. Gets an outside release. The ball, like I said, was thrown a little bit too far out in front of him, but you saw him being able to beat him. Comeback route on the 3rd and 8, out of his break with Garrett Williams on his back, elevates with the corner on his back, hauls it in for a 14-yard gain. You just love his ability to make that cut versus a top corner, able to create some separation late. So I think Charlie Jones is going to have a huge day in this game if Purdue wants to pull off the upset. And with Charlie Jones, look, this is a kid, 97 catches, just under 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. He's going to get a look at the next level. I think Iowa, they didn't really throw the ball to the receivers a whole lot. Purdue allowed him to be able to showcase what he can do, and I think as a possession receiver type of guy, he's going to be someone that teams are going to be excited to bring into camp, and I think he's a guy that can end up making an NFL roster when it's all said and done. And then the tight end, Payne Durham, look, they have Bryson Hopkins. I think Payne Durham fits in that same mold, 6'5", 255 yards. 2 straight seasons with at least 45 receptions. This year, 54 for 550 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's going to be that weapon over the middle for Aiden O'Connell, a bit of a safety valve, if you will. He's a guy that I think is going to have a big day as well in that passing attack. Look, Aiden O'Connell is going to have to be sharp. He's going to have to make sure that he's not throwing any picks, and they've got to take advantage of any mishaps there by J.J. McCarthy when he does throw the football. Because, look, Ohio State, they gambled at times, and they got their hand caught in the cookie jar, and Cornelius Johnson beats them on the outside. Really what they were looking to do was run the football. We know Blake Corum out for the year with the knee injury, the Heisman candidate. He's done. That dude was just a bowling ball, and then once he gets out into space, he's going to run away from you. To me, he was one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in this draft class. I'll be curious to see if he decides to declare or if he comes back to Michigan. That's going to be one of those interesting things. They got some big guys in Purdue's secondary. They got Cam Trice, who's 6'3", 219 pounds. The corner. Against Minnesota, used the length to disrupt a throw to the 6'7", 260-pound tight end, Brevin Spam-Ford. They got Cam Allen, the safety, 6'1", 210 pounds. This is a dude had a 65-yard pick six. Very intelligent player. So they've got some players there on the back end of the defense. Reese Taylor, the Indiana transfer, he's a physical corner. He likes to hit, good ball skills. A guy that's gonna, not afraid to come downhill in the running game as well. 5'11", 190 pounds. But really, it's going to be about that running game for Michigan, right? And Donovan Edwards proved that he's a game running back for the Wolverines, even with Blake Corum being out. But it's going to start at that offensive line. And look, my favorite center in the game is Olusegun Oluwatimi. And look, the Virginia transfer, you didn't think that the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line could get any better. Then you throw in the 6'3", 307-pounder. And this guy, look, he's physical at the point of attack. Against Ohio State, man, he got his hands underneath the pad level of Teron Vincent, the defensive tackle, drops his anchor, drives his man down the field on his own read to the outside. Gets to the second level off the snap to seal off the linebacker Tommy Eichenberg, allowing Donovan Edwards to take off on one of his 75-yard touchdowns. Able to hook, Teron Vincent, and then the right guard Zach Zinter, who we'll talk about as well, kicks out the linebacker, opening up another hole en route to another touchdown run for Donovan Edwards. This guy was paving the way. I think he's going to end up being your Remington Award winner when it's all said and done, or Remington Trophy Award winner, I should say. So Zach Zinter, the guard, he's only a junior, but you want to talk about a dude who's physical at the point of attack and a guy who's just going to win and beat you up. He's 6'6", 320 pounds. Does a really good job pulling around. I thought he did a great job getting into Zach Harrison when he pulled, nullifying that ability to chase down the run from the backside. Very physical. The power in his hands against Penn State. He strikes into the defensive end, Chop Robinson, shoves him to the ground, turns to his left, shoves the defensive tackle, Hakeem Beamon, just shoving him to the ground as well, just throwing everybody out of the club. This is a guy who's so physical at the point of attack. Pretty good athlete, getting there on the outside as well. If he decides to come out, I think he's going to be one of the better guards in this year's draft class. Again, he's going to have to declare if he decides to do that. And then Ryan Hayes, the tackle, another guy who's a very, very sound at the point of attack. He's big, he's physical, he's 6'7", 305. Needs to watch, the oversetting. He overset against Zach Harrison, who attacked that inside shoulder. Ended up getting to J.J. McCarthy, hit his arm as he tried to throw. But the kick out blocks, I thought he did a great job blocking on JT Tuimoloau. Shooting those hands in and then being able to anchor, play with good leverage. That pad level at times wants to creep up a little bit. Really want to see that speed as a pass rush, as a pass protector. I think the rush at times will get a little bit, overwhelm him at times. I think he's probably at his best playing right tackle, but a guy that I think could be an early day 3 pick and could be a guy that'll end up playing in the league for a long time over at that right tackle position. Now, defensively, you got Mike Morris. They're 6'6", 292 pounds. He leads Michigan in tackles for loss and sacks. He's physical at the point of attack. He's explosive coming off the edge. He's battled some injuries, so the health obviously is a concern. But look, 11 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. He's a guy that is looking to be a playmaker there for Michigan, and he's really the guy to keep an eye out for. Now Mazi Smith, team captain, this is really an interesting situation with Mazi, because this is a guy who is facing a felony weapons charge. That's obviously a concern. It was an October 7th incident. Charges were filed on Wednesday, and it stemmed from an incident in Ann Arbor. Apparently, details of the incident, that was ultimately why it took nearly 2 months to file charges, according to the Detroit Free Press. The question really is going to be, what is going on with Mazi Smith? Is he going to be playing? What's happening there? I think ultimately he's earned the trust of Jim Harbaugh and his staff. What's going to happen there with the big man in the middle? Look, he's 6'3", 326 pounds. He's stout at the point of attack. He's a guy that's going to look to be disruptive against both the pass and the run. If he's not in the middle of the defense, they're very deep along the defensive front there at Michigan, but I think that'd be a huge loss if ultimately Mazi doesn't play because of this felony weapons charge that they're looking at there for big number 58. At the secondary, DJ Turner is going to be the number one corner that's probably going to be tasked with dealing with Charlie Jones. He's 6 foot, 181 pounds, and 15 pass breakups, 3 interceptions in his career with the Wolverines. This is a guy, look, teams try to look to the other side of the field because they really don't want to deal with DJ Turner. But then what you're running into a lot of times is the nickel, Mike Sainristil. Look, he was a receiver until this past season. You're kind of forced into that role, and now this is a guy that I think is going to get drafted pretty high because of his skills. The ball skills are there, 5'10", 185 pounds. You see his leadership ability on the field. 4.5 tackles for loss to go with 7 pass breakups. Also has a couple of sacks. You love the physicality, and you love the instincts there on the outside. This guy was born to play that nickel role, and so I think ultimately you're going to see him get his name called at the next level when it's all said and done. When you look at it, I just think Purdue is going to be outclassed by Michigan. I think Michigan ends up rolling away with this one. Let Donovan Edwards just continue to run that football behind that huge offensive line. I think they're going to end up being the Joe Moore Award winners yet again, which then takes us to Georgia sitting there at number 1, SEC championship game against LSU. Kind of lost the luster after LSU loses to Texas A&M. When you talk about Georgia, you have to talk about Stetson Bennett, a guy who I think is going to be a late day 3 pick. Look, I know he's small, 5'11", 190 pounds. Reminds me of Chase Daniel, a guy who's really carved out a niche for himself as a backup quarterback at the next level. Very efficient as a passer, 64% completion percentage in his career, 55 touchdowns, just 20 interceptions, average arm strength, but a guy who is very intelligent. Anticipation is one of his keys. Ball placement as well. Shows off some pretty decent athleticism for a guy that I don't think people, it's not really what he's known for. His leadership ability, those are things that absolutely jump off the film when you watch him play. Georgia's running back, I think, is one of the better backs in the country, and that's going to be Kenny McIntosh. I know that they've got, Edwards, and they've got Kendall Milton. They've got other guys there in the backfield, but it's going to be Kenny McIntosh that's going to kind of run the show, at least out of the gate. And what you love is the patience. That's really one of the themes that we've heard with a lot of these running backs is that patience, the ability to allow these blockers to set up the holes for these running backs. Excellent vision to see those cutback lanes, and then he has the burst to get down the field. Against Kentucky, he was able to show off some nimble feet, making these jump cuts in and out to avoid defenders, then get down the field, showing his ability to accelerate past defenders. Then he wants to lower that shoulder, run over guys, and show that speed after that. That's what I love, is that contact. He runs through contact, and then he's able to continue to accelerate down the football field. 6'1", 210 pounds. I think Kenny McIntosh is the guy that'll probably end up being in that third round range. I think his hands kind of speak for themselves. Very good and reliable receiver. 68 catches in his career. He's a lot of fun to watch. And look, you can't look at just the stats. He only has 1,400 yards on the ground in his career, but Georgia loves to have that running back by committee, and we know how Georgia's running backs, James Cook is just the latest. I think Kenny McIntosh is going to be a third-round pick, and he's going to be a darn good running back there at the next level. At the receiver position, they're very young at that receiver spot, but Ladd McConkey, the redshirt sophomore, he is draft eligible, likely not going to be coming out, but this is a guy, look, he was the gunner down the ball at the 1-yard line against Georgia Tech, but he has speed vertically, excellent route runner. I don't think he's going to declare for the draft. I think he'll come back for one more season, get to play with Brock Bowers, a guy who has a chance to end up being a top 10 pick at that tight end position. Very special receiver at that tight end position. But there is another tight end. I mentioned him earlier in the podcast, and that's Darnell Washington. Looks like another offensive lineman out there at 6'7", 265 pounds. Physical after the catch, tremendous wingspan. The catch radius is huge for this guy, but you love the fact that he's improving as a blocker. He can be a lead blocker for those running backs, picking up the blocks there on the linebackers and the safety at the next level, second level. Can also block out on the outside, whether it's for Bowers or the receivers to extend plays as well. I think Darnell Washington is going to have a big game. When you look at that offensive line, Broderick Jones is a guy who's going to be a first-round pick. I think the fact that Olu Fashanu surprised everyone. I have Fashanu as a clear-cut top 10 pick if he were to come out. Decides he wants to come back at Penn State. Guys kind of shuffle a little bit now. I think Paris Johnson probably slides into that top 10 potentially. Peter Skoronski probably going to be right in that range where Rashawn Slater was. After that, Broderick Jones is probably going to be the next offensive lineman off the board, probably in that mid-teens, possibly into the 20s. But very athletic, 6'4", 310 pounds. The redshirt sophomore bends very well. He can anchor against the bull rush. Very light on his feet. I thought the one thing that was telling, though, you watched him against Georgia Tech. He was struggling to keep Keon White in front of him. The defensive end would try to get those inside moves. You'd see him kind of reach and grab and bend at times. He actually got Keon White in a headlock on one play. Wasn't called for a hold. Keon White's the guy that I think is going to be a problem at the next level. And when you look at LSU, they've got a couple of pass rushers. Ali Gay has kind of struggled at times. You're expecting him to be a breakout performer, and that just hasn't really happened for him. I think his draft stock's kind of plummeted after a promising start to his career. Just 5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. But it's really the play of the guy on the opposite side, and that's B.J. Ojulari. Big number 18, 6'3", 244 pounds. Tremendous length for this guy, though. 24 tackles for loss, 16.5 sacks in his career. The motor never stops. This is a guy who's going to bend coming off the edge. He's always working to the quarterback. He's going to be a problem coming off the edge. Warren McClendon there on the left side is going to have his hands full with Ojulari. Then you think about Harold Perkins. If Harold Perkins against Broderick Jones, that's the matchup I'm really looking forward to, because Harold Perkins is a dude that everyone's excited to see him in a couple of years when he's draft eligible. That's going to be the matchup. What is Broderick Jones going to be able to do there? Can LSU put pressure on Stetson Bennett? Really get after the quarterback. Obviously they're going to want to, that offensive line is going to want to establish that line of scrimmage and really force their will upon LSU. But the one thing that LSU has going for them is the fact that they have some physicality to them. Jacqueline Roy, the defensive tackle, is a guy that can be physical at the point of attack, but also get up the field. But then you also have those edge rushers who are going to be a problem there for the Bulldogs. And then, look, when LSU has the football, I know what happened a week ago against A&M, but when you look at what LSU was able to do against Bama, the 32-31 win, Jayden Daniels was efficient as a passer. I think Jayden Daniels is very inconsistent, and he had a great day there against Bama. I think he's going to have to do the same against Georgia. Georgia's had some of those has given up some of those opportunities. There is some youth on that defense. They play a lot of guys, a lot of young guys on that defense, though. A lot of guys that are starting to step up. Utilizing that receiving core, obviously Jason Taylor's son, the freshman, is going to be a fabulous tight end for them. Malik Neighbors and Kayshon Boutte on the outside. Then that running game, getting physical with Bama, with Josh Williams and John Emery. And look, that's kind of the same recipe that they should be taking against Georgia, is really wanting to allow Jayden Daniels to run the football and be able to use those running backs as well. Keep that Georgia offense off the football field and let them go. Let them really start establishing that line of scrimmage. I know it's easier said than done, but Jayden, if you're asking Jayden Daniels to be the guy, the inconsistency is absolutely. Look, I know he's 68% completion percentage on the year, over 2,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. But the decision making, some of the ball placement at times can be a little questionable. But it's what he does with his legs that is so impressive. He'll get back to pass, and then he's got these long strides. It doesn't even look like he's moving very fast. Next thing you know, you look up and he's run the ball for 25 yards. 824 yards on the ground, 11 touchdowns. He's going to be a guy that's going to be a problem there for Georgia. Kayshon Boutte, this was a receiver coming into the season that I think everybody was expecting him to have another stellar season. I think really the chemistry with him and Jayden Daniels just hasn't gotten to the level that we were expecting. 6 foot, 190 pounds. The junior, look, absolutely dominant with the ball in his hands a season ago. This is a guy who was attacking the football well down the field, and really he's not really asked to stretch the defense. And look, this was a guy who in his last game as a freshman against Mississippi, 14 catches, 308 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Absolutely ridiculous. But he's never really risen to that level of play as a sophomore or a junior. He only played in 6 games his sophomore season. Last game there was in October. Had 2 100-yard games in that season, and then 2022 hits, and honestly, we haven't seen a whole lot. He's had started to come on of late. Did have a 100-yard game against Florida. Had 3 games in the last 6 where he's caught at least 5 passes. But I'm really wanting to see more out of Kayshon Boutte. I thought a lot of the body language that we saw during the first part of the season, where he and Jayden Daniels weren't on the same page, that was a little bit concerning as well. But you wonder if you look at Derek Stingley, another LSU Tiger, didn't really live up to the hype after his freshman season in terms of some of that productivity. Didn't matter by the time he got to the NFL. This kid was balling out. Can we expect something similar there for Kayshon Boutte? For this game against Georgia, I don't know that it's going to matter too much. I think if LSU is going to get it done, it's going to be really weighing heavily on that running game, getting Josh Williams and John Emery established to go along with Jayden Daniels, then being able to play action pass, zone reads, things like that. And then that'll open up some of the situational passing for LSU if they want to try to take down Georgia. And obviously we know Georgia's got a top 5 defender there on that defensive line. Jalen Carter is a man among boys at times. If you watch that game against Oregon, just taking poor Malasala Amave Laulu and just took his shoulder with his hand and just kind of shoved him aside before dropping the running back for no gain. Just so physical off the ball. But you see him firing quickly, the speed to power, gets into the chest of that offensive line, uses those hands to get off the block, and then will get to the quarterback or get to the ball carrier. He's going to close that space. He's going to want to muscle you. He's going to want to bench press you, create some space after that, and be able to, after he's driven you into the backfield, affect the play in that way, sometimes getting his man to take away a hole for that running back, allow some of those linebackers to make plays as well. He's pretty scheme versatile too. He's a guy that kind of lines up all over the line, 6'3", 310 pounds. I think Detroit, I think Seattle, right now those are two teams that look to have top 5 picks. I think they're going to absolutely be eyeing Jalen Carter when it's all said and done. You put him there in the middle of that defense, I think he can be really a wrecking ball and be a force there against that run and getting after the quarterback a little bit as well. Just going to have to be careful because if you get to Jayden Daniels and you're forcing him, he's at his best when he's leaving the pocket. So you're going to have to make sure that if you are putting pressure on him, that you're keeping him there, that you're keeping contained. And that's going to really be, rely on a lot of those younger linebackers there on the outside. Keely Ringo, he's going to be tasked with dealing with Malik Neighbors and Kayshon Boutte, 6'2", 210 pounds, the redshirt sophomore. Look, there are times where this guy looks absolutely phenomenal. You see him getting, running stride for stride with the receiver after the jam. Just ultimately sometimes runs the route better than the receivers. Gets his head around the look, the lean, getting over the top of routes. He's physical, wanting to affect that. Their back shoulder throws where his body position, he's able to still challenge the football at the catch point. No real separation a lot of times, but he does get himself into trouble. He does get picked on at times, and that's really because I think teams know that he's out on an island all by himself. So there are times where Ringo gets beat, ends up having to grab, hold, and get called for defensive pass interference at times. There are times where he doesn't always get his head around to locate the football in time. I think coming downhill, especially against Cedric Tillman, he will fly out of control, and Tillman would end up breaking the arm tackle and getting down the field for extra yards. He's got to play within himself. This guy's one of the best corners in college football for a reason. He can run stride for stride with virtually any wide receiver in college football. He's just got to make sure that he stays within himself, and he'll misjudge a ball from time to time. He'll get caught with his eyes in the backfield at times. Other times, he won't get his head around it at all to locate the football. Will do so late, and sometimes we'll get a little handsy. But this dude's playing out on an island for a reason. I think Kayshon Boutte, if you line up against Ringo, he's going to have some opportunities. He's going to have to take advantage of it because I don't think he's going to want to give up too many of those. Christopher Smith, the safety, I think he's really had an exceptional year, and obviously, I think that shows when you look at some of the awards and the award shows where Christopher Smith is getting some of the accolades. I think it's the Nagurski Award that he's a finalist for, and it's well deserved. This guy is really the leader of the back end of that defense, and what I really like about Christopher Smith is just the savviness. This is the guy that understands what he's seeing in front of him. You're not going to see a ton of wasted movement. He's not going to bite on some of the fakes. He's a guy that's he's going to play smart. He's going to play within himself. And like I said, he's a lot of fun to watch on the back end. Keep an eye on 29 if you want to see where the football is going to end up going. He's only 5'10", 185 pounds, so he's not the biggest guy by any means, but he'll fly downhill, drop the running back or the quarterback for a tackle for loss. You're going to see him blitz off the edge. So times the blitzes very well. Like I said, runs the alley, does a really good job there. Reads the quarterback's eyes, excellent anticipation, ends up jumping routes, making plays on the football. And really, when you look at Christopher Smith's stats, and I know stats don't always tell the story. You're going to have to watch the tape and everything. Everyone's going to say that. Yes, I get that. When you look at the stats tell the story as well. 47 tackles, 4 for loss, a sack, 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery. This is a guy that's going to be making plays all over the field, and he's going to have to do that against this LSU offense. He's going to have to come downhill, challenge Jayden Daniels. You've got a couple of physical running backs in Williams and John Emery. And then on the back end, being able to help out some of those corners and be able to show off his ability to cover at times as well. But look, he's a playmaker. He's a guy that I think is one of the better safeties in the draft. Could he come off the board late day 2, possibly? Likely, late day 2, early day 3. But he's going to be an intelligent player who could end up starting early in his NFL career. So I think when it's all said and done, I think the undefeated teams will stay undefeated. That USC Utah game is really going to be interesting. Which defense is going to show up for USC? Is a guy like Eric Gentry going to be the difference? You know that offense, Caleb Williams, they're going to be explosive. They're going to want to put up points against Utah. Can they play ball control? Can they grind it out on the ground, keep their defense off the field at times? And are they going to be able to find a way to stop Dalton Kincaid and really Devon Vele as well? The fact that Tavion Thomas isn't there, that takes away from the running game, but Micah Bernard is an accomplished back in his own right. He's the guy that I think they have to make sure that they're not just playing the pass, that they're able to stuff the run, make them one-dimensional. But they tried to make him one-dimensional when they played Utah the last time. USC was up, and Dalton Kincaid happened. So that's really going to be the biggest thing. What can Alex Grinch do to stop Dalton Kincaid? It's going to be a fun game. I honestly don't know who's going to win. I'm a Trojan alum. I'm going to be pulling for the Trojans. Can they get it done? I think they absolutely can, and they can avenge their only loss. But, man, you give Kyle Whittingham time to scheme against you. Not only will that defense be fired up and ready to go, Clark Phillips is going to be itching to get a pick 6. But then offensively, Cam Rising and Dalton Kincaid, they want to hang another 16 reception for over 200 yards on the Trojans yet again and play spoiler. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And that's going to be the first game of the weekend. We'll be talking about that game. We're going to be talking about what we saw from our draft-eligible prospects, in addition to really all of the conference championships. The other ones that we're going to have to see on Friday, UTSA taking on North Texas. UTSA, Zachary Franklin, an NFL receiver, catching passes from Frank Harris, a guy who has a chance to make an NFL roster because I think he has that skill set as a passer and a guy that can do a lot with his legs. You've got Toledo against Ohio in the MAC championship, and with Toledo, really the guy that I'm most excited to look for, and most excited to see is the 6'3", 250-pound edge rusher Jamal Hines, number 91, 21.5 sacks, 46 tackles for loss in his career. A guy that just knows how to make plays behind the line of scrimmage. He also has 16 pass breakups as well. He's athletic coming off the edge. He's not just a one-trick pony, though. Like I said, he's going to want to get his hands in the passing lane. He's going to want to make plays behind the line of scrimmage against the run as well. A lot of fun to watch there. Be interested to see what he can do. Yes, we've got another quarterback with the last name of Rourke at Ohio. Curtis Rourke, 6'3", 211 pounds. Look, his brother Nathan was more of the runner. This is a kid, 69% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. The junior, he'll be a guy that really want to see what he can do in 2023 to be talking about next year's draft class. Going to be interesting to see what Curtis Rourke can do, one of those group of 5 quarterbacks that we're really looking forward to. I think this will be a game that can really start helping build some of that momentum into next year for the Bobcats. Sun Belt Championship. This is going to be a fun game if everybody plays. That's really going to be the biggest thing. This is going to be played in Veterans Memorial Stadium in Troy, Alabama. Coastal Carolina, the big question mark is going to be whether or not Grayson McCall, the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year is going to be on the football field. That's really going to be the big question mark. He's battled injuries. He didn't play last week. James Madison really rolled over Coastal Carolina. That's going to be the big worry there for the Chanticleers. Can this kid play? He's a fourth-year junior, so he could absolutely come back and play for the Chants in 2023. It might behoove him to do that. Needs to really show that arm strength. Can he build upon that? Because this kid, the anticipation, the athleticism, his ability to, he just doesn't make mistakes. Has 7 interceptions in his career. 21 touchdowns, 1 interception, 207.6 QBR. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous a season ago, but nearly 69% completion percentage this past season, and a guy who has over 1,000 yards on the ground and 15 touchdowns. Grayson McCall, to me, is a guy, he's a gamer, 6'3", 210. He's going to be a mid-day 3 pick right now, if I were to venture to guess. I think he's the guy that would benefit from coming back to school for one more season. But it's going to be interesting to see exactly how all of that plays out. Then you look at Troy, and Carlton Marshall is a kid who's just absolutely special. He's undersized. He's 5'9", 210 pounds, but the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year is a guy that he flies around to the football. He's a Burlsworth Trophy finalist. Along with Aiden O'Connell and Stetson Bennett, started his career as a walk-on, and he's leaving Troy. I mean, just look at this. 555 tackles, 4 straight seasons with at least 110 tackles. 50.5 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks, 6 interceptions, 9 pass breakups, 8 forced fumbles, and a partridge in a pear tree. This dude does it all for the Troy Trojans. And I think, with Grayson McCall out there, I think you could say that Coastal Carolina likely wins this ball game, but without him, I think that really levels the playing field. Then you get to the American and the American Athletic Conference. You've got UCF taking on Tulane, the number 18 Green Wave, and this is a team that's led by their standout running back, Tyjae Spears. Over 1,100 yards on the ground, 14 touchdowns to go along with 20 receptions. And this is a guy, look, he's a junior, but he's decided that he's going to declare for the draft. And he's going to the Senior Bowl because he's a guy that's graduated already, so he falls into that category. And look, Tyjae Spears, if you haven't gotten to watch him play yet, he's really a lot of fun to watch at that running back position. Look, went into that Cincinnati game, 5 straight games with over 120 yards. He's good out of the backfield, really soft hands, but you love the feet. Very quick feet to bounce it outside, or the lateral cuts to get inside and then outside and back inside. The vision between the tackles to see a lane, then that lateral cut, bouncing it, getting it to the outside or hitting that hole. Very patient before getting downhill as well. Tyjae Spears, if Tulane wants to win, number 22 has to have another big game, and I'm expecting him to do that there against UCF. UCF is going to want to throw the football all around the yard. I mean, we know what Gus Malzahn is going to want to do. That offense can be high-powered and explosive. Defensively, the guy that I'm going to be watching for, though, is Jason Johnson, the number 15, the inside linebacker, 6'2", 224 pounds, a guy who is instinctive, has 114 tackles on the year. He's a guy that's going to be playing sideline to sideline. He's going to be tasked with taking on Tyjae Spears. And at the end of the day, if he can't slow down Spears, then I think Tulane ends up walking away with the win and is likely going to represent the group of 5 in the New Year's Six Bowls. Moving on from there, you got Fresno State and Boise State. After the way the season started with Boise State, I think the fact that they are sitting there in this conversation, I think you have to be excited for the Broncos. And with Boise, I think the best draft prospect is going to be their safety, J.L. Skinner. Has 59 tackles on the year, 4 interceptions. He's big. He's physical. He's 6'4", 218 pounds. You're going to be wanting to keep an eye on him on the back end of the defense. Offensively, they've got Taylon Green, the quarterback, a guy who makes plays both through the air and on the ground. George Holani, 1,000-yard rusher for Boise State. But I'll tell you, the fact that Fresno State, after what happened to their quarterback, Jake Haener, to start out the season, the fact that they are back in the Mountain West Conference Championship, I think that speaks a lot to the coaching of Jeff Tedford. When it comes down to it with this team, they had a 7-1 conference record. And, with Jake Haener, you feel for the guy. Once he got back out onto the football field, I think this was a much different team. And when you look at Haener, obviously he goes down against USC, has the struggles there, and then doesn't play again until the 29th of October. And in those games, they went 5-0. This is a guy, 73% completion percentage on the year, over 2,400 yards, 17 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. 6'1", 195. He's not the biggest guy by any means, but Jake Haener, he's gutty. He's a gamer. He knows where to go with the football. He's a tremendous leader. He was playing very well against USC before he went down to the injury. He's a guy to keep an eye out for with Fresno State. I think Fresno State ends up winning this game. I think Boise, they've got a lot of momentum there, but I think Fresno State, they've just been clicking on all cylinders, especially ever since they got their quarterback back in the fold. And then David Perales on defense for the Bulldogs. He's number 99, 6'3", 246. He was a problem against USC. He was getting to the quarterback, making life miserable for Caleb Williams. 45 tackles, 15 going for loss, 10.5 sacks. He's got 37 tackles for loss and 22 sacks in 3 seasons there at Fresno State. The senior, he's a guy, look, he's relentless. He's always going to be fighting, getting after the quarterback. He's not a guy who's overly bendy by any means, but he uses his hands very well. He's got a nice slap and rip, and he'll attack you with the bull rush as well. This is a guy that I think is going to have to continue to put pressure on Taylon Green. It's easier said than done, but I think Fresno State, man, you can't count Jake Haener out. I mean, we saw that against UCLA a season ago. Jake Haener, to me, is a guy that's going to be a late day 3 pick. He's a gutty dude. I think he'll play a while in the NFL, and I think he'll actually get a few starts under his belt. He could end up being the next Taylor Heineke when it's all said and done. A backup quarterback who could absolutely step in and be your starter for portions of the season if needed due to injury. So after that Fresno game, the Fresno State game, you've got the night game, which is going to be Michigan and Purdue, and then Clemson, North Carolina. Clemson, obviously, you've got DJ Uiagalelei. The question is he going to transfer out of Clemson or not? There's rumors that he may try to move out west to play with his brother. Who's a 5-star defensive lineman out of St. John Bosco, where the two went to school. When you talk about Clemson, the question really, for me is Brian Bresee going to be playing? I know this is a guy that's just, he's been hit with the injury bug. I know that there was the death in the family, his sister that was battling cancer as well. There's a lot that has happened to this poor kid this season, and you really want to see him go out on a high note, win an ACC championship. You want to see him do it out on the field. He's 6'5", 300. He's explosive, getting up the field. He can be very disruptive. Excellent hands at the point of attack. Needs to watch that pad level at times. It'll creep up and it'll get him into trouble. But this is a guy, look, he's going to be physical. He's going to play with leverage, but then he's also going to beat you at the point of attack. He's going to look to beat the block, especially on those inside zones, and get inside, cross the face of the offensive lineman, get into the backfield, and make plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's very disruptive. I think Clemson's a hell of a lot better when they actually have Brian Bresee in the game. Myles Murphy on the outside there, 6'5", 275 pounds. We know that Myles Murphy's going to be a freak of nature at the combine. I'm curious to see where he's going to test, but 36 tackles for loss, 18.5 sacks in his career. And with Myles Murphy, you love the hands. I saw him play against Syracuse, drives both of his hands into the chest of the left tackle, drives him back until he's just past the quarterback, frees that left hand, disengages with his right, works back to Garrett Schrader for the sack. This is a guy that, I think not only is he using the hands, he has the speed as well. Against Florida State, he absolutely worked over Robert Scott, really already had his hips kind of flipped off the snap, attacks that outside shoulder, speed rush getting right around, use those hands to clear a little bit, close down in a hurry, gets to Jordan Travis for a sack there, and he was just doing that time and time again. What you really loved was his ability to get up the field and chase down Zay Flowers on an end around, dropping him for a loss of 2 yards when they played Boston College. He's a menace. He's going to be very difficult to deal with there for the Tar Heels. KJ Henry, 6'4", 255. He's going to be a speed rusher there coming off the edge as well. Tyler Davis on the inside, 6'2", 300. Biggest thing for this line is just staying healthy. If they can do that, they're really going to be tremendous there against UNC. Trenton Simpson, 6'3", 225, not quite on the level of Isaiah Simmons, but a guy who I think could end up being a first-round pick because he does a little bit of everything. He has the speed coming off the edge as a pass rusher, can bend coming off the edge, has tremendous range, sideline to sideline, can drop into coverage as well. Gets after the passer, gets his hand in throwing lanes, 21 and a half tackles for loss, 13 sacks, 5 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles in his career. Keep an eye out for number 22. Drake May is going to have to know where he is on the field at all times. Same with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. This is a guy that always seems to be in the passing lane. Really made life miserable for Spencer Rattler when they played South Carolina. Ultimately, Rattler was trying to hit a receiver up the seam, and the eyes ultimately allowed Trotter to go over there and make a play on it. But look, Drake May is a special quarterback. We're going to be talking about him next year as a guy that's going to be competing with Caleb Williams to be that number 1 quarterback taken in the first overall pick in the draft. 6'5", 220 pounds, over 67% completion percentage, 3,800 yards through the air, 35 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions, 629 yards on the ground. He's got a tremendous NFL arm, can make all the throws already, and the decision-making, the anticipation. This is a legit NFL prospect. And Josh Downs, look, he's only 5'10", 180 pounds, but you see the suddenness. You love the route running ability, the speed to get deep. He's really the weapon on the outside for Drake May that he absolutely loves. And this past season, 83 catches, 929 yards, and 11 scores, 4 downs. He'll go over 1,000 yards after the ACC championship. And look, he'll be back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. This is a guy who I think, could be a late first-rounder, but likely is going to be an early second-round pick. But I think any NFL quarterback who ends up with Josh Downs on their roster is going to be excited because they're going to have a legit vertical threat, a guy who knows how to get open and then make plays after the catch. Up front for them, Asim Richards, he's going to be drawing the task of having to deal with KJ Henry and Miles Murphy. I think he gets quick out of his stance. I thought he did a really good job sliding with Drake Thomas when they played against NC State. You saw him patient. He'd wait for the spin move back inside, slides, able to pick that up very well. I thought that he did a good job anchoring. He's not overly physical in the running game, but he's a dude that even when his hands get slapped away, he resets his hands in a hurry. Asim Richards is one of those tackles that people aren't talking about, but I think he can be a guy that could be a starter at the next level. 6'4", 315 pounds. This will be a game to really showcase what he can do. Defensively, I think this secondary with Tony Grimes and Storm Duck, 2 junior corners, they could have a big day really affecting DJ Uiagalelei. DJ, we know he's had an up and down career, especially this season. He's had some really stellar games. Other games, he's kind of almost looked lost at times, and Cole Klubnik would have to come in and bail him out. That's the one part that I'm worried about there. They may have to stick to the ground game. Will Shipley, a kid who's going to be in that conversation for one of the top running backs in next year's draft class. But the guy's blocking for him. Jordan McFadden. Look, McFadden is not the biggest guy by any means, but he's proven that he's got the foot speed. He's proven that he can anchor a little bit as well. And he's a guy that I think is going to end up being a day 3 pick. Could end up playing tackle or guard at the next level. I think a lot of people have him slated to be a guard, and I wouldn't disagree with that at all. I think that's kind of where I see him potentially having to play. One other guy, if he's healthy, the tight end there for Clemson, he's a junior, Davis Allen, 6'6", 250 pounds. He's a weapon up the seam. He's athletic. All DJ has to do is put the ball up in the air and allow Davis Allen to adjust to the football in the air, can contort his body to make some catches. Really a large catch radius. So he's a guy to be on the lookout for as well. I think it's going to be a fun game. It's going to be an explosive game. I think we're going to see a lot of points scored. Don't be surprised if NC State pulls a stunner. If so, then that's going to start off the conversation about Drake May for next year's draft class. Can he unseat Caleb Williams, who I think right now is probably the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft cycle? It's going to be a fun conversation to have for sure. It's kind of the conversation we've had this year with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. So, it's always fun when we have quarterbacks that we can talk about at the top of the draft. So we're going to know after this week who's going to be playing in the college football playoff. I think everybody feels that Georgia, Michigan, TCU should all be punching their tickets. The question is going to be whether or not USC can get it done. And even if TCU may lose to K-State, they could still be in because they'd still have that one loss. It's in the conference championship. The fact that they've lost some of those close games, Ohio State's ugly loss there against Michigan, how's that going to factor in? The fact that Bama has 2 losses, you don't see them jumping TCU or Ohio State. Really what's going to happen is if TCU and USC lose, I think that could potentially pave the way for both Ohio State and Alabama. It's really going to be interesting to see. If chalk holds up, then you'd be looking at potentially USC against Georgia, Michigan taking on TCU. Some very interesting matchups there. We'll be talking more about that, but really want to get into talking about the draft eligible prospects more than anything else. And then we'll get into the bowl matchups. That's really going to be a fun conversation over the next couple of weeks before the bowl season kicks off. Really talking about the guys to keep an eye out for, at least one player on every single team going to a bowl game that you're going to want to watch out for during bowl season. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up for the podcast for now. This has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I've been your host, Gregg Schutze. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. Conference championships. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will know who will be playing in the college football playoff by the end of the weekend. So enjoy your weekend of college football. We'll talk soon. Until next time,